The Joe Rogan Experience.
Colbert's an interesting cat, man.
Yeah,
he's a bunch of things rolled up into one because he's a legitimate Catholic. Like, he's really Catholic.
Yeah.
Despite all the scandals and kid fucking and all the craziness. And then on top of that, he's this character, but now he's not the character anymore.
No. Yeah.
Now he's like a guy who's not totally playing the character, but the character comes in and out like little shadows.
Yes, it does.
And it's like, what are you? What's your real thoughts on things? Because I know you as Colbert.
Yeah.
I know you from the Colbert Report, this hilarious fake Republican guy.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing you. I'm not sure what's going on here, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's well, and when you're in late night, you know, I play a character on my show too. That's like a heightened version of myself that's developed. It's like a very extra nerdy. It's almost like me as Pee Wee Herman a little bit.
Right.
Like it's me as my younger self. It's like very socially awkward. I'm oh, sorry. Like it's a lot of up there, you know.
Yeah.
And it's different than what I do on stage. You know, I can only imagine, even though he's like, his big thing for late night was like, I'm going to be myself. I'm not the character anymore. You still build a little bit of a character for yourself, you know?
Yeah, well, also with him, it's like, that's what brought him to the dance.
Yeah.
The reason why you're there is like, what kind of meetings did they have with him?
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to do here? We're going to play this straight? Or are you going to be Colbert?
I heard him say once, he only said this in one interview, but he was like, we're basically creating a new character for late night. And so he had the same writers from the Colbert Report. And so he was like, we're sort of like creating a new character. How does this character work? But I got to say, the old show, I mean, he's great. The old show was probably the best performance ever made by a single late night comic, because the way that when I watch it now, if I go back and watch clips, I'm like, the way he would do like 3 or 4 fast little turns, you know, single line where it would like mean one thing, but there'd be some subtext, then he would flip around and he would do it. Like, it was like watching like a figure skater do triple axels, you know, like watching him do that. It was really impressive.
I like the guy, don't get me wrong, but I like him more on the Colbert Report than I like him as a late night talk show host. But I think
do have to agree.
I think that's also my prejudice against that format. I'm like, you guys just saw what Jack Parr did and kept going.
Totally.
It's the same goddamn thing.
But I understand why he couldn't do the Colbert. He did that show for like 10 years.
Of course.
You know, like
you
can't do, that was a limited thing for him, you know, like he had that character, and so he could only do what was in the box, that character. And so he's looking to do more, and I get it. I also feel like, man, that Colbert Report is more interesting than the late night show to me as a comic and as a comedy writing fan.
Well, for sure, because the late night shows are just promotion shows. That's all they are. All they are is, hey, Adam, I hear you have a book out. Hey, Mike, tell us about your new show.
Here's our 10 minutes of comedy before that, and then we do that.
Yeah, it's like it's basically like a version of a commercial.
And the nightly thing is a prison, you know, because you can only talk about what happened that day. So the smartest thing that, you know, John Oliver, right? He was up for The Daily Show. He wanted to do The Daily Show. He was Jon Stewart's pick for The Daily Show. They said this in the oral history book of The Daily Show. And then Comedy Central didn't close the deal with Oliver, and HBO came and said, you want to do a show instead, you know? And Jon Stewart was like, all right, go with God. And that's what John Oliver did instead. So we're living in that alternate reality from John Oliver hosting The Daily Show.
Right.
And so the smartest thing Oliver did was do weekly and not daily, because it lets him go wider, right? If he was doing daily, he would have to just talk about what happened that day. You don't have that much. Guess what? You can't have as much of a complete thought in 24 hours or in realistically the 6 hours you have between when you show up and when you tape the show, right? You can't say as much. It's harder. And so being on that, you know, weekly schedule, and he's only doing 30 something shows a year, right? Because they have hiatuses. That's what allows them to have those big, long, complete thoughts that everyone likes so much, you know?
His rants and his intelligent takes on news issues and pointing out hypocrisy. Yeah, it's great.
Our show, it takes us like 3 or 4 months to write an episode. Like, we're writing 16 at once, but like, you know, that's how long we have to think about it. And so we're able to take twists and turns, you know. We go into it thinking this is going to be our angle, and then we're diving into the research. We have a wonderful research staff, and they say, actually, this is the more interesting part of the story. And then we have the time to go chase it that way instead, right? Whereas if we were on a daily schedule, oh shit, well, we don't have time to pivot because we got a show to make, right?
Do you ever feel time constraints, like in terms of like the subject matter? The subject matter is like very, very involved? Yeah,
I mean, we try to do the most difficult topics we can. You know, we don't hold back from anything. But the only constraint that we have is that the show, we've got 21 minutes, and then but we've got commercials, so we can only talk about something for 6 minutes before we have to move on, right? And so that's the that's the only limitation that we have.